The first words out of her mouth that morning were not a greeting, not a question, but a demand. "Name your price," she said, standing at my fence line like she already owned the soil under my boots. Behind her, two men in pastel polo shirts and sunglasses idled in a white Lexus SUV, the kind of smug accessory people here like to flaunt. I was halfway through mending the south pasture fence when I realized she wasn't joking. "Price for what?" I asked, though I already knew. My 46 acres were the only thing standing between her newly elected HOA presidency and a gleaming row of so-called luxury villas she'd been promising in her campaign. She didn't blink. "For all of it. The HOA will handle the paperwork. The developer will cut you a check, and everyone will be better off." She said better off, like she was talking about cleaning up a trash heap. I told her the land wasn't for sale ever. That's when her lips curled into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Oh, you'll sell," she hissed. "Because if you don't, we'll make your life here impossible." I could have laughed if I wasn't so damn furious. This wasn't just dirt, and Grasset was my grandfather's land. Passed down through 2 wars, weathered storms, droughts, and taxes meant to bleed people like us dry. But she didn't care. Karen wasn't from here. She'd moved in 2 years ago, bought a cookie-cutter mansion in the View Lot development, and decided her HOA's rules reached farther than they legally could. I'd heard the whispers bullied the O'Haras into selling their orchard by citing fake zoning changes. The land was raised in under a week. I wasn't about to be next. "You got 2 minutes to get off my fence line," I told her, keeping my voice flat, "or I'll make a call you won't like." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you can scare me with some small-town nonsense? We own this neighborhood now." What she didn't know and was about to learn was that this neighborhood didn't touch my property on a single legal map. The only thing connecting us was a shared gravel road, and I owned every inch of it up to their subdivision's gate. I let her rant for another 30 seconds before I walked toward her, rolling up my right sleeve. Her gaze flicked down and stopped cold. The ink on my forearm wasn't decorative. It was the Ranger Battalion crest, earned the hard way, and every scar around it told a story she wasn't ready to hear. I watched her pupils shrink, her voice falter for the first time. She stepped back without meaning to. "You're military?" she asked, but it came out more like a statement. I didn't answer. I just held her stare until she looked away. The twist came later that day when her developer friends showed up without her. They thought they'd lean on me harder, maybe wave a briefcase of cash in my face. Instead, they got a chair on my porch, a jug of well water, and a front row seat to a brief history lesson about land rights, easements, and the federal protections tied to properties owned by combat veterans. When I told them that my grandfather's original deed signed in 1947 was part of a conservation program that couldn't legally be overridden by any HOA, their smirks evaporated. I could see the math happening in their heads. No land, no villas, no fat payout. But they still underestimated me. The next morning, a certified letter hit my mailbox. Notice of HOA noncompliance. It accused me of obstructing community development and ordered me to cease all hostile behavior toward HOA representatives. That was my favorite line. Hostile behavior? All I'd done was refuse to be robbed. The real fun began when I decided to stop playing defense. I dug into county records, pulled every permit they'd filed, and found not 1 but 6 violations, 2 of them criminal. Unauthorized wetland disturbance. Illegal removal of protected oak trees. The kind of stuff state environmental agencies drool over. My call to the Department of Natural Resources wasn't just answered, it was escalated. 2 days later, a convoy of state trucks rolled up to the development gate, clipboards in hand. Karen's pastel kingdom froze as inspectors fanned out with cameras, measuring tapes, and very official-looking expressions. I leaned against my fence post and watched her storm out, waving her arms and trying to block their view. She spotted me and marched over, voice raised for the whole street to hear. "You think you're clever?" she spat. "You can't stop progress. You're just one man." I didn't move, didn't raise my voice. I just told her, "One man's all it takes if you've got the law and the truth." That's when she stepped too close, grabbed the fence with both hands, and snarled something I won't repeat. She didn't notice one of the inspectors filming her from the shoulder. She didn't notice the microphone clipped to his vest. But she sure noticed when two sheriff's deputies walked up behind her and asked her to step aside. Her face turned the color of boiled shrimp as they explained loudly that she was now under investigation for multiple counts of harassment and trespassing. Karen's voice cracked as the deputies repeated the charges. The words criminal trespass hanging in the humid air like a sentence already passed. She looked around for backup, maybe from her developer friends, maybe from the gawkers now gathering along the HOA's pristine sidewalks, but nobody stepped forward. People's eyes darted between me, the deputies, and the state inspectors, and it was clear the tide had shifted. The pastel kingdom was crumbling, and the queen had no allies left. I could have ended it there, but I knew better than to leave a wounded animal cornered. I had more truth to unload, and this time it wasn't just for her, it was for everyone watching. I stepped forward, resting one boot on the bottom rail of the fence. "You want to tell them, or should I?" I asked. Karen's lips tightened. She didn't answer, so I did it for her. I told them about the illegal oak removals, about the wetlands being bulldozed for future parking lots, about the backroom deal she'd cut to bypass county environmental review, a deal that would have landed her subdivision with a fine so massive it could bankrupt the HOA. Gasps rippled through the crowd, whispers darting from porch to porch. Then I pulled out my phone, thumbed the screen, and a video started playing. Karen, standing in front of a backhoe, directing the operator to push through a wetland barrier tape. The date stamp was less than a month old. She lunged toward the fence, trying to snatch the phone through the rails, but the deputies stepped in, hands out. One of the inspectors came over and asked if I could send them the footage. I did, right there watching Karen's face drain of color as the clip transferred. The female deputy took a step closer to her, her voice steady. "Ma'am, you need to understand this isn't just a civil matter anymore. You're looking at felony-level environmental crimes." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but then like some divine bit of timing another vehicle pulled up. Not a squad car. Not a developer's Lexus. A dusty green pickup with a license plate only a few people in this county recognized. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Sergeant First Class Raymond Brooks, my old Ranger teammate and now an enforcement liaison for the state's Department of Military Lands. The crowd went silent as he strode up, the kind of presence you feel before you see. "Heard you've been giving my buddy here trouble," he said to Karen without a hint of a smile. "That true?" she stammered, looking from his camo ball cap to the patches on his jacket. He turned to me. "You didn't tell me it was this bad." I shrugged. "Figured you'd see it yourself." He nodded, then looked back at her. "Ma'am, this land falls under a protected veteran homestead designation. That means any attempt to coerce, intimidate, or illegally pressure the owner into a sale is a federal offense." His voice never rose, but every word landed like a hammer on steel. The murmurs in the crowd turned into open stares. Some people even pulled out their phones to record. Karen tried one last bluff. "You think anyone will believe you over me? I run this HOA," but she stopped when the sergeant held up his phone. On the screen was a map overlay from the original 1947 deed, signed and notarized, with federal seals still crisp. "You run nothing here," he said. "You don't own the road you drive on to get to your precious gate. You don't own the view beyond it. And you sure as hell don't own this land." That's when the deputies stepped forward again, this time taking her gently but firmly by the elbows. "Ma'am, you're coming with us," one of them said. Her protests dissolved into shrill nonsense as they guided her to the cruiser. The sound of the back door shutting was cleaner than any courtroom gavel. Over the next 2 weeks, everything unraveled for her. The developer withdrew, citing irreversible legal complications. The HOA board called an emergency meeting without her, and by the end of it, she was voted out as president. The fines from the environmental violations alone were enough to send shockwaves through their finances. Neighbors who had once nodded along to her grand visions now crossed the street to avoid being associated with her. And as for me, I went back to mending my fences, fixing my gates, and watching the seasons roll across my grandfather's land like they always had. The state sent me a letter thanking me for protecting a heritage property. I framed it and hung it in my barn, right under my old Ranger Battalion photo. The last time I saw Karen, she was standing in line at the county clerk's office, clutching a stack of foreclosure notices. She looked smaller, quieter, like someone who'd finally realized the world didn't bend just because she wanted it to. Our eyes met for half a second, and I swear there was something like shame in hers. Maybe it was too late for her, maybe not, but I didn't need her apology. My land was safe. My grandfather's name was still on the deed. And everyone who'd been there that day knew the truth about who owned what and why it mattered. Sometimes the fight isn't about winning. It's about making damn sure they know they can't take what's yours without a battle. And if they're foolish enough to try, well, they better pray they never see the tattoo. What about you? If someone tried to bully you off your own land, would you fight back or walk away?